welcome to episode 398 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I am here with
Jessica Carr.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about movies that we saw this week in part 1. And in part 2, we will be continuing our Cahiers du YouTube series with Fake Friends, episode 2, Parasocial Hell by Shannon Strucci. And if you get to part 2 and Jessica sounds different and looks different, it's because it's actually Andrew.
It's because I am only in this first part, so...
Andrew introduces...
There you go.
Spoiler alert, he introduces himself as Jessica, so it's a whole thing. It's a bit. We got a bit. We're doing bits now. Yeah. Yeah, we're pivoting. We're pivoting to a comedy podcast, so... Just be ready. All right, let's do it. Mainly, I wanted Jessica to come on to talk about the new Pixar movie Turning Red, which I know you saw a couple weeks ago. I saw a few weeks ago as well, but you were a big fan of it, and I enjoyed it as well. But I want to also just talk about why Pixar keeps putting their good recent movies on Disney Plus only instead of putting them in theaters also. But first we'll talk about the movie. But Turning Red, it came out earlier this or middle of last month, and it's directed by Dami Shi, who she did The Bow, the short film.
Bow short, yeah.
And so this one, it takes place in like the early 2000s in Toronto, and it follows 13-year-old May, who is just kind of going through 13-year-old teenage girl things, but when she hits puberty, instead of just being like in puberty, she becomes a giant red panda, as you do. But yeah, Jessica, what were your thoughts and feelings about Turning Red?
Yeah, so along with it being sad that this movie was like only streaming, it also came out at a pretty bad time. Like the timing was not great because of all of the news that was coming out about Disney being like, we don't want to support LGBTQ plus people, and we don't want anything to be explicitly queer in our films, and that was like very disappointing and very sad. Also ironic for me because I had just done an event at a queer-owned coffee shop, and it was Disney Trivia, and it was lots of LGBTQ plus people who were dressing up as these Disney characters that were their favorite, and it is sad that it's a space that they're not welcome, but a lot of them like really love the characters that Disney has created, and so that is all very disheartening and very sad. And so I wanted to watch the movie with a lot of my girlfriends, but they were kind of like, the air is bad, like this is not a good time for us to be watching this. And it was really sad because the film to me was really great, and it was definitely like different than a lot of Disney films that I've seen. Obviously, there's the Asian representation, which a lot of the Disney movies that I've talked about that have Asian leads, like that's obviously not enough. And it's important to have a story and a narrative that goes along with that cultural representation as well. And I think that Turning Red like really does a good job. And it is representing that it's kind of, I talked about Encanto also when it came out, and that being about, being the child of an immigrant. And Turning Red is very similar to that story, where the through line is that May doesn't want to disappoint her mom, and she is like a straight A student. She's got everything going for her. She is that like just perfect kid, essentially. She's always like, she volunteers at the temple with her mom and is an amazing daughter, doesn't complain, never asks for anything. And kind of like the turning point for her is whenever she's asking her mom if she can go to this concert that all of her friends are going to, and her mom... Yeah, and her mom is like,
concert.
Her mom is like, absolutely not. I don't approve of this. You can't go. And so
she has like a whole like presentation with like why the Four Town concert will be like beneficial to her growth.
Right, which I've totally done before. I tried to get a dog when I was younger, and I made like a pamphlet to give to my parents, and they were like, "We don't care. You still can't have it." So it was definitely a story that I resonated with, not necessarily because I felt this like crushing pressure to always please my parents specifically, but I do understand the sort of like stereotype of the Asian matriarch in the family that is like, you have to please her, anything that she says goes. And I think that Disney has done something with these two movies where they're showing that those like boxes that they're putting these like children of immigrants in are because of fear mostly, where they had to sacrifice a lot for where they are now, and so they want their children to be perfect. They want them to be everything that would prove to everyone that like the sacrifices that they made were worth it. And like May's mom also has just problems with her becoming a woman, like growing up and like seeing boys like being attracted to them and seeing them as, you know, something other than just like somebody you would just like hang out with or whatever. But one of the really funny parts, and the movie is very funny, one of the funniest parts in it is whenever May like gets caught like drawing anime like of the cashier that's at this convenience store that she has a crush on, and she draws like him holding her like shirtless, and it is very funny. I've seen lots of memes like from that where you like fill in whatever your like fan fiction is that you drew as a child. But that was like very funny, and I know too that for a lot of young like Asian women film critics, it's very funny because like almost all of us have a picture of us when we were in middle school, and we look exactly like May. Like we have like the haircut with the bangs and the glasses and the cardigan, and it was just like, to me, it was very well done. It had a really good message. I thought that it looked really good. And I enjoyed the direction that the movie was like taken in and what the themes that were represented were. So I don't know. Like I kind of wish that it didn't come out when it did. I think that the timing like wasn't good, but I really do, because wasn't the director, isn't she the first like woman to do like a solo feature? Is that a thing? Or the first?
I think the director of Brave is a female.
Yeah, but wasn't Brave with two people?
Yeah, I think, but Turning Red I think was with two people. It might have been two women though. Oh, maybe not.
No, it's just one. She's the only director of the movie.
Okay, yeah. So, I guess so.
And it says that she's definitely the first woman to direct a short film for Pixar. So,
yeah.
That's cool.
And we'll specify that. I mean, granted, even though Pixar's under Disney, it is Pixar. Which seems to be,
I always get those confused.
Well,
yeah.
It seems to be living. That's the kind of point I was gonna make. Is Pixar seems to be living in this different realm than like, because Encanto got like a theatrical release. Disney like blew that thing up, you know, because it's a Disney animated studio movie. And Pixar, it seems like those movies to me like the most recent Pixar movies have been kind of not only like good fun movies, but also like kind of interesting. They've tackled stories that are not, you know, like super fantastical or you know, it's not Toy Story or Cars or something like that. You know, like you look at Luca and you look at Turning Red, and they're pretty like by the books, or not by the books, but like they're not like fantastical, you know, these giant stories. I mean, granted, Turning Red has a climax, spoiler alert, where these giant pandas are fighting in an arena. But for the most part, like, it's just kind of this like very self-contained story about May and her mom. And Luca, it's just, you know, it's about him and his family and his friend. And so it's been interesting to see that like those two movies, which I think are, at least to me, are much more interesting and much better made than the Disney animated movies that have been coming out recently. But they've been just getting relegated to Disney Plus, unfortunately. But yeah, I enjoyed Turning Red as well. I think you mentioned the animation. The animation in this is really good. It kind of it dips a little bit into that almost like semi-real realm, when like, because there's this one scene where her dad is making food and it looks like he's like legit it like has the quality of like if people saw The Good Dinosaur and you saw like that ultra realistic looking water, it's like that, but with whatever the meal was he was cooking.
Oh, it looks so cool.
Yeah. But it looks so good. But at the same time, it also will dip into like these kind of like almost anime moments, these kind of comic book anime moments where like she'll have reactions or something like that, and you'll get like the like vivid background or something, you know, and like I kind of dug like this marriage between you know, very like you know, kind of traditional anime TV, you know, stuff like Naruto or One Piece or things like that, and like Pixar animation. It was kind of a cool combo, and that was one of the things that I dug about Turning Red, because I think a lot of the, you know, regardless of quality, you know, you look at like the recent Disney movies, whether it's Encanto or Raya and the Last Dragon or some things like that, like it's very like kind of straightforward animation, and like this one and Luca, they feel like they're kind of, you know, like I thought the director for this is at least playing around with stuff and like trying to like make it a little bit more fun and engaging than just, you know, just kind of, you know, putting out a movie. So I think it's unfortunate that they dumped this on Disney Plus instead of giving it a theatrical run.
Yeah, for sure. And now that you mention it, like with those animation styles or whatever, I love just some of the comedic bits too, of like where she'll be talking and stuff and then she'll get nervous and it'll like zoom in on her face in detail and you can see the sweat just like on her face like pouring down, and it like reminds me of SpongeBob too, wherever they just like ultra detail zoom in on someone's face. And also in the like party scene, whenever she goes to that rich kid's like birthday and they're chugging the colas like the sodas, and everybody's like faces are kind of like stretched out and exaggerated, and all of those like parts were super good. Also, everybody knows that whenever you're about to have a squad of older Asian women, they're about to come up in there with the big old sunglasses and the Gucci purses and the platform flip-flops. I love those like little details in it. I thought that was super funny. And of course, we have to mention the whole period scene, which just like
angered,
pissed off
white women on Facebook.
White women talking about it. And I will say,
God forbid,
that Maymay is lucky that her mom was even like kind of talking to her about it. I told my mom, I was like, I want to wear tampons, and she was like, I'm not gonna talk to you about that. And I was like, all right, cool. So yeah, I was just like when that scene came up, I thought that it was so funny. And whenever I saw previews for this movie, like last year, I was worried that it was like a furry thing. Like I was just like, confused about why they were...
It was going to take a turn?
Yeah, I was just confused about what the angle was or why they were doing it, but it made a lot more sense, like, after I watched the film, and I thought that the concept, like, worked really well. I think a lot of people compare it to Inside Out with the emotional, like, aspects of it or whatever, of being like, you know, this is how a middle school girl is, and this is how her emotions are. But I loved how they turned that into, like, the kind of like the bigger message of, like, not only do young girls have emotions, and it's not just like, oh, you're on your period, that's why you're angry, or you're on your period and you're about to start your period and that's why you're yelling at me. It's like, no, sometimes they're just like pieces of your personality, or like you're forming your personality, and it's okay to voice your emotions and what you're feeling. And I liked that part in Turning Red where it was like she's deciding that she wants to keep the panda part of her because she's saying, like, I am who I am, I want to keep this piece of me because I like it. And so, I don't know, I thought that part was cool. But also I was like, damn, she can just turn into a panda now whenever she feels like it.
Sounds fun as hell.
Wow, that's crazy.
I like the whole, like, I like that instead of making it where she's like trying to hide the panda from everybody, she's like, let's just monetize this, and like she just makes it a grift. Good for her. She got a nice side hustle going. Overachievers, baby. That's what we're talking about.
You gotta find a way.
Yeah, I know. It's just hopefully, it seems like Pixar's doing cool stuff because I like this one. I really liked Luca also. I hope that they'll put him back in movie theaters because I think this one would have played well in a movie theater, like on a big screen. Same with Luca. But I also like that both stories are just very like self-contained, like character stories rather than Cars 3 and Finding Dory and things like that, where it's like just trying to regurgitate nostalgia. So I'm enjoying these. But Turning Red, it's on Disney Plus. Sorry to the LGBTQ community with Disney. I mean, but at the same time, if you didn't realize that Disney was a terrible company, that's kind of, Google's free, guys.
I was like,
Let's talk about
That's
Batman.
right, we're kicking it off. We're doing really well as a comedy podcast. That was our joke that we snuck in there so that you understand what we're pivoting to.
Yeah.
The Batman.
We've talked about it a couple times. I don't think we need to do a whole.
Yeah, no. It's just you know
stuff.
who the Batman is. It's Robert Pattinson playing the Batman.
What did you make of Robert Pattinson?
Oh my gosh, I love grungy emo Batman. It was so funny. Like I hate Batman, first of all. Like, I don't like rich people, and so it's really
a big
hard.
Quality of his.
It's really hard to like Batman because he is just a billionaire who doesn't have any powers. He just has gadgets, and so that's stupid also. He's kind of the worst superhero ever if I had to pick one. I think Batman is probably number one worst superhero.
I would say in terms of rich people superheroes who don't have any powers, I would go with maybe Iron Man being worst because he's also obnoxious.
Well, he has that core thing in his chest, right? So he's
yeah, but I mean, I know old people who have pacemakers and they're not special.
Oh my god! Oh my gosh. Anyways, so pretty much Zach had sold me on this movie when we talked about it, or when he talked about a couple of weeks ago, because he described it as more of a noir, detective sort of movie, and I'm super into that. And
thanks for talking about me in the third person like I'm not here.
I'm not. The listeners are they can hear me. What do you want me to say? You talked about this. Anyways.
Anyway.
So, I really like Paul Dano. He's like one of my favorite actors, and I think he's unconventionally attractive to me, and I don't really
Even
know.
in this one?
No, not in this one at all.
Okay, good.
No, not in this one at all. And he just looks sweaty and like he's not moving his mouth at all. In this one, like, if you're watching the video, an example is like this. He's like he doesn't move his mouth or anything when he's talking. And his mask is like duct tape. Like, it looks like duct tape or some kind of weird material that kind of looks like he's got a little like latch for his lips, and it's just latch. Yeah, it's just crazy.
It looks like the Zodiac guy in Zodiac who kills like the people at, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and much like Zodiac, like whenever you're investigating all of these like upper crust people in Gotham that are dying, like there are lots of things that are kind of like Zodiac where you're like finding clues and you go to the crime scene and it's like, oh wow, his like hand is cut off and it's shoved in his like pocket or whatever. Like, it's just weird. Also, some of the contraptions that the Riddler uses like reminded me of Saw. Like, there was a point where it was just like he like stuffed a man in a maze and then had like rats just like crawling around in there. And then, but the funny part is that every single time they find, you know, crime scene and they find a body, it was like he had a
Hallmark card.
A little Hallmark card, and it said "To the Batman," which I thought was very cool. It was very cute. But
somebody was like, they should have just like if Batman was that good of a detective, he would have just went to like Michael's or something and been like, do you see any like depressed sad boys coming and buying a bunch of greeting card
I'm convinced
equipment?
he made the cards. I'm convinced
Well,
he made them.
He went to like Michael's and they were like, yeah, this really weird dude just came in and he bought a bunch of greeting card things.
Creepy old ass looking cards he pasted together from like children's books or something. It was like weird. But yeah, and then there was like the point in the movie where the Riddler is just like, yeah, Bruce Wayne, just an orphan, an ivory tower, nobody gives a shit about him. And it's like everyone always cares about him, but they don't care about the orphans that were starving. And I was like, I agree with him. I agree with everything he's saying.
You were like...
I was just like, yep, he knows what he's talking about. And that's when it's kind of like, I don't know. The only...
How did you feel about the length?
No, it was too long. It was way too long. There was lots of stuff that they could have cut out. Also, like, just some of the parts where he was, like, replaying the night before, where I was like, oh, I was there. I don't need to see this. Like, why are you doing this? Also...
He's very sad.
Yeah, he's super sad. Oh my gosh, my favorite Letterboxd review is the one that says, like, gangly ass, translucent ass, pale... Pale Batman. Is like, I cheered whenever he like left the Batcave and went upstairs to see Alfred, and he like was like cringing because of the sunlight, and then he like put sunglasses on, and then it was like, put those sunglasses on, you little freak. So funny.
The funniest part was the beginning of the movie where they go to that first crime scene and he's like, and again, like I talked about this I think a couple episodes ago, but like he's doing it because he's recording all this stuff, but like it's just so funny because he's like walking like really slowly like this around the crime scene, and they're just like looking at him like, why is he like just,
why are you doing this? Yeah,
and he's just like walking like looking like this. No, he's very entertaining the entire time because he's just so like gangly and tall and just sad and has like his hair like all the way down there, and he's just like this the entire time.
Everybody hates him too. They're so mean to him. Yeah, everyone like hates his guts. They're like, you freak, get out of here, freak. Like they're always just like yelling at him, and he also, like, a really good point is that he's barely Bruce Wayne, like, in the movie at all. He's, like, Batman for probably, like, 80% of the movie. Which is, I mean, I think that's interesting because a lot of superhero movies like to do at least half and half, where it's like they're the superhero, but then this is their real life and how that is. But this movie was like, actually, we don't give a shit about what Bruce Wayne's, like, actual life is like.
In his ivory tower being an orphan.
It was just like, yeah, whatever. But, yeah, like, I just think, I thought the length was too long, and I thought some of the stuff with his dad just got, like, super convoluted, where it was like...
I would have cut the whole John Turturro side plot out of it.
It just...
I would have cut that out and put more Colin Farrell.
Yeah, like, literally, Colin Farrell is the rat, and that's it. Like, we're good. We don't need anything else. Colin Farrell was the rat. That's it. Like, we don't need any of the other stuff. It doesn't matter. It's all fine. We had fun. We had a good time. We know what happened. He's going to be sad and ride off with his motorcycle. And then that's it. But, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, thumbs up on the Batman?
Thumbs up on Batman. I thought it was good. I don't want them to make another one. I won't watch it. I will not. I mean, they're going to. Stop it. Stop.
I mean, they're going to.
No. Quit. Tell them to quit. That's it. That's it. That's all I have. Just make one good thing and then move on to the next good thing. That's it.
Move on with your life.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's our takeaway. Turning Red, great. Disney, not great. And then Batman, just enjoy the one thing and move on. All right. Well, we're gonna be talking about the opposite of that whole concept in part 2 after this short break, where I'm gonna ditch Jessica and find Andrew. So stay around.
Hello, Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Well, now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
The truth is my biggest problem is you. I want to please you, but I want to stay true to myself. I want to give you the night out that you deserve, but I want to say what I think and not care what you think about it. A part of me loves you. Part of me hates you. Part of me needs you. Part of me fears you. And I don't think that I can handle this right now. Handle this right now. I don't think that I can handle this right now. I don't think that I can handle this right now. I don't think that I can handle this right.
I don't think that I can handle this right.
Look at them, they're just staring at me like, come and watch the skinny kid with a steadily declining mental health.
And we're back with part 2 of episode 398 of Cemetery. For those who are probably confused, Andrew has now joined us, but in this...
No, I'm Jessica Carr.
Oh, you're right. So Jessica has some feature changes, but Jessica's still here.
Yeah.
And in this part, we're going to be continuing our Cahiers du YouTube.
It's our Cahiers du Cinema series.
Cahiers du YouTube series with Shannon Strucci's video essay. What is it? Fake Friends, Fake Friends, Parasocial Hell? Is that the title?
That's right. The true long title is Fake Friends Episode 2, Parasocial Hell, but it's one of those things where, kind of like with the alt-right playbook, it's part of a series. You don't need to watch the series. I actually have only watched maybe half of the first part. It's not as interesting as part 2, which stands on its own as a feature film, which she kind of says in the credits like she wanted to make a feature-length YouTube video.
Okay. Well, you've seen this at least twice, so just give us a kind of a rough idea of what the thesis of this is.
Yeah. So I'm sure most people listening to this are familiar with what a parasocial relationship is. It's kind of become a common parlance on social media, especially in like the podcasty YouTube sphere. But if you are unfamiliar, a parasocial relationship is essentially a one-sided relationship where the member who is actually having the relationship is kind of like viewing the other person's life through some sort of medium, whether that be television or live streaming or podcasting or whatever. You feel like you know them, but you don't actually know them. And this is a thing that actually goes back into much earlier eras. The first episode of Parasocial Hell talks a lot about talk show hosts, but with like the particular era of the internet that we are living in now, parasocial relationships have just kind of exploded and become a much bigger part of audience members' lives and much more of a concern in the lives of creators who kind of need to negotiate that boundary with their audience. And so this video, Fake Friends, Parasocial Hell, is an almost 2-hour-long exploration of how this phenomenon has manifested in the lives of many YouTube and Twitch creators. But one of the things that's really interesting about it is that it does not restrict itself to just talking about, the type of parasocial relationship that, is most common. It also kind of like is constantly zigging and zagging and making lots of connections to other things that you might not consider parasocial relationships, right? So like the first stop on her tour through all of these is actually about a romantic quote unquote relationship between a zoo penguin and like a cardboard cutout anime girl that was put inside the zoo habitat. And she also talks about like robot animals that are given to like elderly people suffering from dementia. She talks about the famous monkey experiment where the monkey has like these two mothers, the robotic metal mother that feeds the monkey and then like the soft cuddly mother that does not provide any sort of nutrients for the monkey. And it kind of goes all over the place, but it's sort of amazing. I don't know that much about Shannon Strucci. I've not watched many of her other YouTube videos other than this one. This is actually her most popular video by like almost double what the second most popular video is. But it's sort of become like this foundational text for understanding like the modern phenomenon of parasocial relationships. And I think that like as a documentary, as a piece of cinema, this is like one of the more impressive things I've seen on YouTube. And I wanted to include it in this series primarily, I guess there's two reasons I want to include it. One is that it is very much about a thing that we've touched on in other episodes that has kind of impacted the lives of people like ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis. And it's also relevant to us as podcasters to a certain extent. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was like the craft of this, specifically like the editing craft. I mean, that is the primary way that video essays are put together, like editing clips that already exist from other places. Shannon Strucci has like basically none of her own footage here. But I think that the editing in this video is like radical. The first 10 minutes of the video never like settles into a narration sequence, right? It's just like cutting back and forth between all these disparate things and hoping the audience, and like trusting the audience to keep up and like connect the dots between all these things. And she's kind of like putting all these clips in conversation with one another in a way that feels much more like art than the explainer YouTube video essay.
The one thing I was thinking of, like in terms of just like clips with kind of background talking, is it's kind of like this almost updated, modern to a degree version of like Ken Burns. You know, like if you think of like a Ken Burns documentary, whether it's like baseball or Civil War, you have like the picture with like the zoom in of the picture. It doesn't necessarily have that, but it's not like you're seeing. You don't have too many talking heads. You don't have like Ken Burns, like, on screen talking. You just kind of hear his, hear his voice or somebody's voice in the background. And then you just kind of like see these images. And it reminded me of that, but it like in a way that was, as you described it, is like they're very much like in dialogue with one another, which is less, you see less of that like in Ken Burns.
Yeah. And like, even when it does settle into the more standard, I'm explaining clips and the reason why I'm showing them to you thing, once we get to like 10 minutes in, it's still kind of free flowing and free associative. Like the transitions between different topics are really abrupt. She's not drawing all those lines super clearly. And there are still parts where it becomes very like impressionistic, especially towards the end.
Yeah, and that didn't bug me because I think it feels in line. Like I think you have to kind of get on that wavelength to also understand the subject, because all of the subject matter is about how all of these things are all kind of compacted on one another, and like the creativeness and the community and the person and the people, and it's all of that stuff is all is all stacked on one another into this, at least in my opinion, this kind of depressing.
Yeah, this is definitely like an exhausting watch. Like I watched it with Jessie, and afterwards she was like, "Man, can we watch something that doesn't make me think tomorrow night?" Because this was just a lot to process.
And like Jessica, you just popped on Kung Fu Panda, and we're like,
we popped on Kung Fu Panda. That's right.
It's a deep cut there for our Parasocial fans.
Another thing that I wanted to say about editing before we move on from that topic is that, like, I think that she's also really ambitious with how long she's willing to let clips play out. Like, video essays have a certain rhythm to them that you guys talked about last week is pretty much established by somebody like Lindsay Ellis, and then popularized further and codified in certain ways by ContraPoints. Where like there's like this snappiness, and whenever we're cutting to a clip or cutting to a quote or something, you're never expecting it to last more than like 5 or 10 seconds, because we got to get back to the narrative voice. We got to get back to the argument, right? But Shannon Strucci, like when she decides she wants to show you something, she just sits and lets you watch it for a really long time. Like you hear a lot of Eminem's Stan. You hear whenever she, I think the most emotionally heavy section of the video is whenever she shows you the streamer Jacksepticeye playing the video game That Dragon Cancer and talking about it. And she just like lets you sit and listen to him talk for like 5 minutes or so, and there's another super long clip of him later. It's like she just really commits to every single thing that she wants to talk about, and again is like trusting the audience to follow and trusting the audience to put the pieces together and make sense of this in the context of all these other detours that we've taken along the way.
Yeah. As like I think as a documentary, I think it's pretty good. I think it kind of like not only does it present the, like we've been talking about, not only does it present the kind of thesis it's getting at and the information it's trying to convey, but also like it I think she structures it in a way to feel compatible with the content itself. Like it's something like we talked about last week, something like Lindsay Ellis, if she's covering whether it's The Hobbit or it's a Disney movie or it's a Marvel movie or something like that, like you probably want to see a lot of like what she's referencing. Yeah, and so I think that like she like Shannon Strucci does a great job of like marrying those two things all at once. It was like, I'll say this, and it's not in a dismissive way, but like a lot of this, I didn't connect with it, not necessarily because I didn't understand what was going on. I think I understood and it made me sad what was going on, but like I understand like the desire to watch like whether it's like a Twitch stream of like somebody playing a video game or like Red Letter Media where they talk for like 3-4 hours at a time about like a movie or stuff like that. Like I understand that stuff on like a pragmatic level. I don't want to do that at all. In terms of me personally, Zach, I have no desire to do that. And so, right, like to me, like hearing about like the relationships between, dang man, let's pop down. Like hearing about like I don't know, like to me there's something sad. There's just something sad about like you sit there and you watch a Red Letter Media video for 3.5 hours talking about whatever movie, and like you have this relationship with these men that like you don't know and they don't know you, and like, but at the same time I'm at least somewhat empathetic to it because I understand why that would be developed. Just for like you mentioned that like talk show hosts are like kind of an early version of this, but I think also like that's just kind of like culture in general. We have like not like incredibly well developed parasocial relationships, but you think about how people interact with. It can be Marvel or DC movies or comics, or it can be political figures. It can be like different kind of parasocial relationships that we have with just like, because culture has converged in this way, in such a way that like you can go, oh, well, these people who are watching Red Letter Media videos and have like these parasocial relationships with these guys is sad. I'm like, yeah, but you have a parasocial relationship with like MSNBC or Fox News or something like that. One of the most interesting moments of this for me is when you're watching the Red Letter Media guys talk about that like fake boyfriend VHS tape, where they're talking about like, here's a VHS tape for lonely loser women to sit at home and pretend they have a boyfriend. Like, how pathetic must you be to watch this video of somebody pretending to be your boyfriend? But like, they are completely unaware of the fact that they are providing the exact same service for their viewers. Not the idea of like a fake romantic relationship, of course, but I mean the idea of just like people sitting down and watching to pretend they have friends, or to pretend they're friends with these people specifically. Like that is sort of the appeal of podcasts on one level, right? I mean, we do listen to them in order to be informed, but we also listen to them for the personalities and just to like, there's a sense of comfort and entertainment that comes from hearing the voice of somebody that you know very well. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have like I don't feel like I know him, but I've been listening to Mark Maron for a number of years now. Like I know when like the different things he does, like in a conversation, like he always asks who are your guys. It's very entertaining to me. Like like you just kind of wait for him to do that. I was listening to actually a Mark Maron podcast earlier today, and I think that I thought a lot more about that relationship with Maron and his podcast more recently because of just kind of like I felt really like sad for him whenever he was going through when Lynn Shelton, his partner, died.
Oh yeah.
And like I felt really sad for him, and I like listened to you listen to the podcast and stuff that he did afterwards, and like I did legitimately feel like this deep sadness for this person. I don't know him. I'm not to the level of the people who like send him stuff, but I'm just like this is a person who I've listened to in a podcast from his previous, like, again, I know this, his previous 2 divorces to other relationships to this one that was deeply meaningful, and like hearing just how he's progressed, even just as like a person, like his thought process now, like he's just a different thinker than he was when I started listening to it. And so like when Lynn Shelton died, it was really sad. But at the same time, it wasn't, I don't know, am I better or worse than like these other parasocial relationships?
Well, I think that, it's a complicated topic where it's not as simple as parasocial relationships bad, right? Because on a certain level, it is instinctual. It's human nature. I feel like there's so much like human vulnerability on display in this video. I'm sure there are people who have parasocial relationships with us if they've listened to this podcast for long enough,
parasocial
right?
relationships.
And I am deeply grateful that the people who listen to us, because I know there are people who listen to us, though we never hear from them, aren't fucking creeps.
We have
thank you for not being fucking creeps.
Parasocial relationships. You all are fantastic.
Yeah.
If you have Zach t-shirts, that's cool, but you keep it to yourself. I love it.
There's when we did the Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song episode, and Zach was like, please just reach out to us. We want to know who's listening. And we got one like very kind, heartfelt email that did like kind of keep us going for a little while.
Well, and if Corey's still listening to this, Corey, that's still my favorite fan. Like,
it's the best fan letter we've ever gotten.
I still love it.
But like on a certain level, I'm kind of glad that we don't have as much interaction, because that's really stressful. Like the only time that the podcast has gotten a lot of attention all at once was when we were doing our Letterboxd series and we had Todd Gaines on, and we didn't know some of the icky stuff about Todd Gaines, and like there were people like dragging our name through the mud on Twitter, and like I think that stuff like that would be happening all the time if we had a more active like parasocial audience, like the McElroy brothers. That shit is insane. I cannot imagine being the McElroy brothers and like trying to hold yourself to that standard of like all good vibes all the time and like being these pure good cuddly boys, but having as big of an obsessive fan base as they have. Like that just seems like parasocial hell.
Yeah, and that's why I say like it's not. I think she gets to like the messiness of it. She talks a little bit about it's less about the people and it's more. It's as always. It's less about the people and more about the mechanisms in place. Like the internet fosters that type of relationship, and I think the one thing I was thinking about while watching this, because I think the question is probably like, why now? Why is it now? Like, is this festering? And I think it's because the one thing that the internet did was it opened up all of these different avenues, all of these different highways to like the whole world. Like you think about like the early part of the 20th century. you had like newspapers and things like that, and that was, but it was you were just congested in your community, like that source of information was just going there. And as you got like television and radio and things like that, it expanded out a little bit, and honestly, you started to have those parasocial relationships. You think about like radio programs like Little Orphan Annie, like you're telling me that's not a parasocial relationship. You're thinking about like people who would watch like Walter Cronkite on the evening news, like that's not a parasocial relationship. And I think as it continued to expand out, like it feels it's like why is this now? Well, it feels natural to me. You have people who literally anywhere in the world can watch a Red Letter Media thing, and they're interacting with these people who, if this was 1901, would not have any connection or any knowledge of this person even existing.
Well, they wouldn't be able to be in dialogue with the person,
yeah.
right? Jacksepticeye talks about this at one point in the video, where he says like, if you go make a movie, you spend several years making a movie, and then you put it out, and then you get to talk about it with some people. But he makes a video, uploads it the next day, and then he can go read the comments immediately, and you're just kind of like riding that loop forever. And like that's the mechanism you're talking about, right? Like when the way in which an artist communicates to their audience changes, and the way in which an audience gets to communicate back with the artist like explodes in the way that it has, like that fundamentally changes that relationship. And like I think that's one reason why people like Natalie Wynn, ContraPoints, and Lindsay Ellis have just like had such a bad time on the internet, because like they are in dialogue with people who watch them and are just like kind of, I don't know, every word is kind of surveilled and scrutinized, right?
It's probably incredibly exhausting. It's and because you think about it, it's not even like it was, you think of like the movie Hail Caesar, like that's all about the Josh Brolin character kind of working as that like fixer in the middle of like the movie star and like the fan and the public.
Right. And there's this whole machine that's kind of operating outside of it.
Keeping the stars away from like what actually people are talking about. And with like Natalie Wynn and Lindsay Ellis, it's like, no, you got the direct line, because you can send something via Twitter or Instagram, and it's not like it's going through. They don't have people. They're not Beyonce, so they don't have people to like. So it's going directly to them, and you're just giving them. You think it's like, oh, it's just my comment. That's not that much, but it's your comment times 200,000.
It's a sea of your comments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, that's why they can't handle it.
And I mean, if you're living in 1901 or whatever, and you wanted to write a letter to the person who's doing the new Little Orphan Annie broadcast, like you could do that, but there's a lot of friction and a lot of space and time between those messages being delivered.
Those. I mean, like
there is, yeah.
Like it's been like we've had this dialogue at the newspaper when it comes to like letters to the editor, because we really don't get many letters to the editor anymore, because it's just fucking old people, because they're the ones who who are like,
if they have a thing they want to say, they just post as a Facebook status,
exactly,
right?
Like people, they go, well, why aren't we getting? It's because there's like, why would you go through the newspaper to do that? Like people don't necessarily view that as like the public space for dialogue anymore. They can just, if they really wanted to get something out there, they would just put it on Facebook. Like we ran a column recently from this parent talking about schools, and technically she posted it in one of the local Facebook groups ahead of time and was getting feedback there. And it was really interesting, because then I got coffee with her after the column ran, and it was very much two different feedback loops. In the group that she knew, she was getting all this positive feedback and it was fine. Then she put it in the newspaper and it was put to a different audience and a different public, and it was a lot of negative stuff. And so it was like this weird, like and so she was like, I just had to stop looking, because I didn't want to just get positive feedback, but at the same time, like the negative stuff, it's just these people I don't know just kind of going, you're an idiot.
Yeah. And I think, like, from the perspective of a creator, it's very hard not to look at that stuff, right? Like, whenever Cinematary was blowing up for the whole Todd Gaines thing, I was, name searching us and responding to people, and eventually you, Zach, were like, just back off. Just don't
There's
engage
a lot of Zach
anymore.
Me going, Andrew, you got to stop looking at comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, because I don't think, I think traditionally people would be like, well, no, you need to hear that feedback. But I think this show, like these creators could tell you, and this shows that like there's a threshold of feedback that after a while you're like, yeah, you don't need this. Like you can tune it out.
Yeah.
After a while.
I mean, people need feedback that's constructive from people they trust
and people who are invested in like that's what I always tell people from my position. It's like I listen to people who are invested in said issue and are like engaging in it critically and thinking about it. Random ass yelling person I don't care about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Gosh, there's something else I was going to say and I have forgotten it.
You mentioned a couple of the figures as well. I'm curious to maybe talk a little bit about somebody, because you have like those people like gosh, I forgot his name, Jacksepticeye. It was
Jacksepticeye.
Jacksepticeye. But then you have somebody who she uses a lot of footage from, like Bo Burnham, and Bo Burnham's whole thing is
who's like a vocal critic of all this.
Like he's engaging in what we're talking about, but also is very vocal about, like she shows a lot of like this. I believe it's a stand-up special where
I think it's Make Happy.
Yeah, where he has like a song about how. And Bo Burnham is kind of an interesting figure also because he also is like very open about like, I'm a privileged white guy who got really lucky, but then also like I want this affirmation and I want, and so I mean, what do you make of like, I guess the Bo Burnham, the self-aware person?
Yeah. I think that's really interesting because Bo Burnham, I actually was just looking at the fake, I was scrubbing through fake friends on YouTube and I saw somebody left a comment saying, I'm just going to read the comment. Ironically, I feel, oh gosh, just clicked away from it. I'm going back. Hold on. The comment is, ironically, I feel like Bo Burnham constantly, oh God. Sorry, I need to mute the video. This will be a fun edit for you, Zach. They said, ironically, I feel like Bo Burnham constantly dunking on parasocial relationship culture may contribute to fans seeing him as authentic and therefore feeling attached to him. Who knows, maybe he does it on purpose. And like that special, Make Happy, where he's kind of like talking about the relationship between creator and audience while also being kind of honest about his own mental health struggles. That's something that I feel like got magnified like crazy last year when he put out Inside, because this kind of speaks to something that the Shannon Strucci video is about, like the way in which parasocial relationships form between people who are hurting in some way and a creator who gives them hope in some way. Like she talks about this with John Darnielle of the Mountain Goats and how he just like has people coming up to him at concerts like talking to them about how like his music saved their life and stuff like that. And that is a thing that I think a lot of people feel for Bo Burnham after Inside came out. Like they felt very heard or seen by like the way in which he gave voice to those mental health struggles. And so like I think that's a really interesting example of how the whole the formula parasocial relationships bad is too reductive, right? Like people on a certain level need role models and they need figures in their life that kind of give them inspiration and give them hope and feel like they have a sense of comfort with. But there is definitely like a limit to like what that can be or where that can go. It's unhealthy, right?
That's why I prefaced the beginning, like, the watching the game streams and the 3 hour, like that kind of stuff. Like I understand, and I understand, like if you want to watch that, like that's awesome for you. Like for me personally, Zach, I'm like that's just like I don't think I could ever see myself. Like I'll tune into I'll pop in for your Twitch streams for a little while just to make a stupid comment and then bounce out. But I'll be honest, like I don't think I could sit there for. I mean, how long do you do that in total?
2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours a week.
I couldn't sit there for the whole 2 hours.
And that's nothing. I mean, most people who actually do streaming will stream for like easy 5-6 hours a day, and there are people who do it like the majority of their waking life, which is just insane to me. I don't understand how you could do that.
Yeah, and I mean, they make money and such, so it's just like,
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean, that's how they do it. They do it with money.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, whatever. Like, you're making money, you make money how you want and enjoy yourself. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. That's why, yeah, I agree. Like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think some people just need those outlets, and if that's the outlet, it's kind of like the whole thing of, yeah, you may not agree with it. You may think it's sad. You may think it's bad in your own mind. But if this person, if it's helping this person, if they're not hurting themselves or other people, like, just let them do it. Like, it's fine. But at the same time,
all those comments under those Red Letter Media videos, that's like, well, I guess I'm gonna postpone killing myself for the next hour while I watch this video. Like, that's just creepy and weird and bad, I feel like.
Yeah, because maybe I misunderstood it, but like that's like a running kind of bit or something. That's like this kind of semi-irony,
it's
like this like
terrible.
Yeah, like it's not a good bit, but it's like it's like a whole running thing. But yeah. I don't know. That's kind of my thing. Is it's like, yeah, I think, that's why I found it really interesting, because I think like older people who maybe look at this think it's like what this is just sad. Like, this is, you have like this need to like watch this thing. But again, that's why I brought up earlier. Like, I think, to a degree, there have been like inklings of parasocial relationships with like the advent of movies and television. Like, you don't think people like had semi-parasocial relationships with like Marilyn Monroe or Cary Grant, or or on TV watching TV with like Johnny Carson and Walter Cronkite. And like, I mean, that's just like it's just kind of that's that dependence and that kind of comfort from seeing that person or whatever. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just I don't think it was as defined as Shannon Strucci put it in this documentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I'm trying to think of other stuff that we haven't covered.
What did you think about this one as like a movie compared to the other things that we've covered on the series, Zach?
I definitely would agree that it's a movie. I thought it was if we were looking at this one compared to the docs, well, so compared to the docs,
I guess like the three we've done that feel like, feature films are the Charlottesville documentary, and then like the 3-parter Lindsay Ellis thing.
Yeah, like I said last week. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. The Charlottesville one for sure. If you watched all of the Lindsay Ellis ones in one sitting, yeah, in this one, because yeah, I think it kind of it covers its information in a way that I think it provided some clarity, and I think it engaged, like I said before, it engaged with the concept that it was kind of getting at in a way that was kind of fascinating to watch. You
feel yourself kind of like getting more and more sucked into it as it goes along, right? Like, this is something that you could define and give just a couple examples of, but she gives you like, dozens of examples.
Well, as you've described, she doesn't only just kind of go like name examples. She makes you sit there while the guy does the 5-6 minute long monologue on his grandmother dying. Like, you sit there and watch the whole thing. She could just be, and that's what I think separates like the video essay from the text. Because think about, like, you could probably write a book or like an essay about parasocial relationships, but do you really capture and understand the concept if you like wrote out? And then he talked about his grandmother dying while this clip from a video game that these parents made after their child died from cancer. Like, that wouldn't like, you would kind of go, oh, okay, but like, rather than explaining it, she just plays out the clip. So then,
and it's not just that like she's talking about visual media, therefore she needs to be visual. Like, it feels to me like the duration and the medium here are serving more of like an emotional purpose. Like, by the time I'm halfway through this thing, I feel trapped by it, which I think is like how she wants you to feel. Like, that is the way that both creators can kind of feel when they're like feeling like they're being held hostage by their audience, and also the way that a lot of those audience members feel, where they feel like they have this, like, they have to hold on to this commitment to this person they're like obsessed with. Like, it is like a spiral into madness at times. You know, there's that Richard Dreyfuss, the guy who wants to meet Richard Dreyfuss is doing it in like a parodic way. But, you know, there's lots. Think about something like the King of Comedy. You know, that's a great example of a parasocial relationship. Like, there are people who get like so obsessed with a particular media figure that it becomes like a curse for them.
Yeah, she mentioned which I know we've talked about the movie Ingrid Goes West. She mentions that, but yeah, she did miss, you know, talking a little bit about the King of Comedy, or even more recently, you know, I think that this came out before Joker, correct?
This definitely came out before Joker,
okay.
But yeah, that's another good touch point.
You know, something like that also I think is trying to engage with more of like the modern concept of that.
Yeah. If there's one criticism I have of the video, it's that, and I don't even think it's even fair to say, but it's that the video is very much curated around pet obsessions of Shannon Strucci. You know, like, because she is who she is and her tastes are what they are, she's like a very particular type of nerd. Like, she's going to talk about things like One Piece and D&D and the Mountain Goats, etc. Or like, are these the best examples? Maybe not. Case by case basis. But it also makes it feel a little bit personal as well.
Well, and I think that's just part of. I think that's just part of the video essay. Like, you just kind of want to do that. You know. Yeah, and think about it now. I mean, that's something that's necessarily unique to just the video essay. I mean, you have directors do that. You know, think about Quentin Tarantino does shit in his movies
Absolutely.
all the time for no fucking reason other than that he just does that.
He likes it.
Yeah. You know, I think about like in the video essay I did about the Beethoven piece, I have this whole sequence that's just kind of like this montage of like cars driving and stuff. It has nothing to do with the song. It was just, it fit with the piece of music at that time, and I was like, fuck, I'm gonna do that. And so
one thing we haven't talked about a whole lot over the course of the series is our own video essays that we've made on this channel. We used to have kind of a rhythm where I was trying to make one a year, and I did that for like 4 years. And then like I was going to make one the year of the pandemic, and I sort of lost my artistic drive to do it. But
oh yeah, me too.
You know, those video essays on the Cemetery channel, the oldest videos on the YouTube channel, if people want to go look at them, are very much, at least for me, inspired by a mode that was sort of codified on Left Tube, especially with Lindsay Ellis and ContraPoints. And like the things that I'm including in those video essays are absolutely a product of like my own personal tastes and stuff, right? Like, I'm trying to think of a really good example, but like most of the stuff in the Slow Cinema video, like, are these the best possible examples? I don't know. These are some of my favorites, right? Like, I want to talk about Moonlight being similar to Beau Travail. But maybe that's not what an academic would have chose to focus on.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I mean, Lindsay Ellis is a big influence on the essays that I did. Every Frame of Painting is a big,
absolutely. Yeah.
But also, and I don't necessarily like or agree with him as a critic anymore, but like the rhythm to the top movies of the year videos that David Ehrlich does is actually a big influence just in terms of like the rhythm of mine, because
he's a good editor. Yeah,
because again, like I really don't like his criticism anymore. His not to get on a whole thing, but like
it's too smarmy.
Well, his writing, he likes to start like at like the top of the mountain and like roll down, and I'm like, sometimes just write the fucking thing, like write about the movie.
Right.
But there's something about the way like he structures those, where he kind of does like this montage of all, like pretty much all the different movies from that year, with the theme throughout by songs that kind of play into the movie but also don't play into the, you know. Those were actually pretty influenced, and I still watch those like occasionally today, just because there's something about like the marriage of the music and the rhythm and the editing and the movies, that those are also kind of influential for me. Yeah, I don't know. This one was good. I mean, again, made me sad. I didn't like. I didn't like it, not because I didn't think it was good, or it was just like, oh, I hope these people are finding, you know. Mainly, it's just I hope these people are finding like healthy like engagement with them and other people, you know, like while I think if you're not hurting yourself or other people and you're engaging in this, like that's fine, there is still some, like the reason you're engaging with these people, and they make this point in the essay, is because humans naturally want to engage with one another, and this is just how you're doing that. So hopefully these people are also like engaging with people with other humans in person as well, not just watching Red Letter Media videos. Right.
If you, listener, would like to talk about your parasocial relationship with us in a non-freaky way, I would like to read the perspective of our audience members on this topic, and how it pertains to Cemetery specifically.
I don't know if I'm prepared to hear that, but yeah, I guess.
Just don't be weird. Just be normal.
No, just do it. I think deep down I'm somewhat curious if there is anything. All right. Well, that will wrap up this episode of the show. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list the one movie that we talked about in this episode. Head over, if you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. We have our $1 and $5 tiers. So if you just kind of want to toss us a buck to say, hey, we don't have a parasocial deep relationship with you, but we like what you do, you can do that. Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Chad Newsom, Corey Willingham, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsati, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, and Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. What are we wrapping up this series with next week, Andrew?
Yeah, so next week we have a double feature of one video by H. Bomber Guy, very important left tuber who we've kind of not touched on at all. He's actually a collaborator of Shannon Strucci's. She mentions him in Fake Friends Parasocial Hell. But one of his most recent videos, which is called Vaccines, A Measured Response. And then the other one is called In Search of a Flat Earth by Dan Olson. Dan Olson is a creator who kind of flies under the radar for a lot of people. He's not like big and flashy. Most of his videos are him just kind of standing in front of a white screen and talking. But he has put out some really impressive work recently. He did a 2.5 hour long explainers on NFTs that is like the expose on NFTs. If you don't feel like you understand that and want to, like, you should go watch that. But I chose these two videos specifically, Vaccines and In Search of a Flat Earth, as a way of wrapping up the series by looking at how LeftTube/BreadTube is trying to respond to new and more chaotic social phenomena. So most of the stuff that we've talked about has kind of historically sort of come out between like 2014 and 2018-ish. And the stuff that's discussed in Vaccines and In Search of a Flat Earth, these both came out in the past year or so, and they are both about different forms of conspiracy theories, because it is a lot easier to, debunk right-wing talking points like the alt-right playbook does than, like hotwire somebody's brain who's like been totally brainwashed by conspiracism. So there's like anti-vax conspiracy theory in the H Bomber Guy video, and then the flat Earth / spoiler QAnon stuff going on in the Dan Olson video. And I just think it would be worth talking about like the effectiveness or lack thereof at trying to tackle something as complicated and difficult as conspiracism in the format of a YouTube video essay. So that's next week.
Yeah, that sounds... I think we're going to need to do a series it's like... We might do a Kung Fu Panda series after this. We should just do something like that. I'm not even joking. I think we need to do like a nice like light breezy series after this.
Yeah. What's like the lawful good equivalent of October? What can we do that's just nice? Hayao Miyazaki series?
I kind of want to do that. That sounds great. I don't even care if there's like a real like bent. I just need like a nice palate cleanser. All right. Until next week. Thanks for listening.